The movie's main character is Pharaoh Olivetti. Now, Pharaoh wasn't born a billionaire. Nope, not at all. He grew up in Italy, really close to his dad. But as he got older, he headed to the United States and worked hard, becoming highly successful. But here's the catch. They knew him for being a ladies' man, surrounded by many women and riches. One day, while Pharaoh was hanging out with his buddy, he got a call from his mom back in Italy. It turned out his dad was sick and close to passing away. So, Pharaoh hopped on a plane to Italy to see his father one last time. When they met, it got super emotional. His dad had one last wish. He wanted Pharaoh to go far away from all his money and fancy stuff and live like he had no cash for a month. He had to live like he was homeless. Pharaoh didn't want to agree, but he couldn't say no, seeing his dad very ill. After his father passed away, Pharaoh said goodbye to his mom and returned to his office. He told his assistant that he was going away for a month. Now, imagine this. He's a super powerful billionaire, and every hour of his time is worth millions. So this was a tough choice. To ensure no one recognized him during his adventure, he switched identities with his driver, Claude. Now let's talk about an amusing incident on his plane journey. This annoying guy on the plane gave the flight attendant a hard time, but she got her revenge by playfully smacking the guy 3 times with a potato. Why? Because earlier, he'd called the potato bad, and it made everyone laugh. Now, Pharaoh arrives in a city carrying just a bag. He hitchhikes with a truck driver. Meanwhile, that annoying guy from the plane ends up in a car with a mysterious woman who's the opposite of him, super polite. Pharaoh tries to find a job at a local shop, but the owner gives him a weird look and turns him down. So he heads to a bar where he munches on the free snacks. He's a good-looking guy, so a lady chats with him, asking about where he's staying and what he does. Pharaoh gets nervous and gives vague answers, which annoys the woman, and she storms off. But then, a desperate-looking woman sits next to him. She figures out he needs a place to crash for the night. Soon enough, Pharaoh ends up in an apartment with this woman. Her name is Diane. Later, Peter, who you remember from the car with the mysterious lady, dresses provocatively and tries to persuade Pharaoh to have a good time. But Pharaoh makes excuses, and they both fall asleep. Now here's where it gets funny. Peter's snoring is so loud that Pharaoh can't sleep. So he sneaks outside to look at Diane, who's still in the car, and that's when Diane wakes up. What a crazy adventure Pharaoh's on, right? Pharaoh was hungry, so he tried to trade 50 cents and some rubber for food at a store, but it didn't work. Then, a lady who seemed scared of a creepy guy followed her home. At night, Pharaoh met a strange woman on a bench, and she made him leave. The following day, he tried to buy a hot dog for 50 cents, but the seller gave it to him for free. While Pharaoh was looking for a job in the newspaper, he got hit by a car. A guy heard his story and took him to meet his boss, who needed a driver. The boss and his wife argued, but Pharaoh still got the job. He even gave $500 to the boss's spoiled daughter like it was nothing. But the boss asked for references and told him to leave. Later that night, Pharaoh worked as a bartender, and people mistreated him. He had to drive a drunk man home. He also gave $5,000 bonuses to his employees because they won a court case. Back in his room, things got weird when the boss's daughter and Mr. Curtis, his boss, tried to do strange things. Pharaoh refused and asked them to leave. Even the wife seemed interested. Following day, the dog got involved too. It seemed like the whole family was desperate. Pharaoh went to his boss's office and saw the same woman from the apartment, which surprised everyone. Then, Pharaoh saw some flowers on her desk, and she got a call from the boss to meet him at his house. Diane, the woman, noticed Pharaoh looking at her through the mirror and scolded him for it. They finally made it to her relative's funeral, which she never liked. During the service, they chuckled at the priest's quirky acts. Afterward, they grabbed some coffee together. At first, their conversation was awkward, but then Pharaoh somehow made things right. She had dated no one since her husband David died 9 years ago. Their chat lasted about 2 hours, and they seemed interested in each other. She also spilled the beans about how she'd wanted to quit her job for ages because her boss was a real pain. She even offered to lend Pharaoh some money, but he politely declined. Before parting ways, they kissed right in front of her parents, who were watching closely. They went on a date the following Tuesday, though her parents weren't thrilled to learn that the man she was dating was just a regular driver. The next day, they went on their date. Meanwhile, she continued working on her project because Mr. Curtis had given her some extra work. A few days later, Mr. Curtis's daughter showed up at the office, leading to Mr. Curtis calling Pharaoh into his office. In a shocking turn of events, he fired Pharaoh, accusing him of something involving his daughter, which wasn't true. Diane couldn't stand seeing Pharaoh being insulted unfairly, so she said a strong word. This left everyone in the office stunned. They both left that miserable place, and Diane invited Pharaoh to have dinner with her parents. They worried about him losing his job, but they did not know Pharaoh was a billionaire. During dinner, Pharaoh dropped the bombshell that he might soon move to California, which relieved her parents. Later, they shared some ice cream, and she called her friend to spill the beans about her relationship with Pharaoh, which took her friend by surprise. The next day, Pharaoh left Mr. Curtis's house and bid farewell to his wife. Diane then approached him to start their agency using her savings, but only if Pharaoh would be her partner. They discussed the business, and Curtis offered them a grand plan. Love was in the air as they celebrated their goals together. Pharaoh admitted he had never met anyone quite like her before. While things seemed perfect, Diane was feeling uneasy about something. She opened up about her search for answers about her husband's untimely death, and a mysterious person who had contacted her. Something terrible had happened to that person. They had overdosed on some substance. Pharaoh comforted her during this emotional revelation. 2 weeks later, their agency was generating significant revenue and profits. While sitting in a park, Pharaoh mentioned that he might have to leave soon. Diane suggested they open the agency in California instead, but Pharaoh was concerned about her business. Then, he received a call from his assistant, revealing that the company would lose control if he didn't show up in court. Pharaoh's assistant stood before the judge at the court hearing, but Pharaoh was nowhere to be seen. The opposing team was close to winning when Pharaoh finally arrived, securing their victory. Diane asked him where he had been, but he kept it a secret. This caused her to run out of the office, and despite Pharaoh's attempts to stop her, she couldn't be restrained. Pharaoh tried repeatedly calling her parents' house, but her mother didn't inform her about the calls. Diane eventually returned to the office, but Pharaoh had disappeared for good. Meanwhile, the man who had helped Pharaoh get a job revealed to Mr. Curtis that he had given Pharaoh a check for $50,000 and that Pharaoh was, in fact, a billionaire. Pharaoh spoke to his mother about Diane and visited her. He explained the situation to her, but still kept his billionaire status a secret. They shared a passionate kiss and romantic moments throughout the night. Diane asked him to stay, but he suggested she come to California, making her dream come true. Pharaoh also proposed that they give away their company shares to the agency. Finally, they set off for California, with Diane unaware of Pharaoh's true wealth. Upon their arrival, Pharaoh's driver, Claude, greeted them. It confused Diane until Pharaoh revealed his true identity as a billionaire. They entered Pharaoh's enormous mansion, and he showed her around, exciting her even more. Diane mentioned she would look for a job, but Pharaoh had other plans. He confessed his love for her, as she had made him her partner. They married before everyone and lived happily ever after, deeply in love.